who am I? Is this who I want to be, or is this what I'm portraying in front of my family and society? Am I being genuine to myself? This all ties to identity. Respected viewers, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of The Real Talk with a Muslim Counselor. I'm your host, Rana Hamid, and today we'll be discussing the topic of identity with Sister Berak Hussein. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Wa alaikum assalam.
When talking of identity, we think of self-esteem and confidence. Now, how are these two factors tied?
Well, they are definitely tied to our mental well-being, our overall balanced mental health. So when we take a look at self-esteem and confidence and identity, there's definitely a link amongst them. So self-esteem has to do with the overall balance and confidence that we have within ourselves, the comfort of who we are and who we want to portray of ourselves out to the world. And so that has to be in genuine balance with each other, our inner selves and our outer. And so this is something that we all have a challenge with, because sometimes people portray outside of themselves differently than who they are internally, right? Because we don't want to show on who we really are, or some feelings or thoughts that we have. And so this comes with part of our identity. And this has to do again with things that we've discussed in terms of our development as children, factors that affect us as we grow older, whether it's language or what we witness within our families, peers, the influences of pop culture around us.
Sometimes to interact or be a part of what everyone else is around you, to fit in.
To fit in, exactly. And so you want to fit in, so then your identity becomes part of the group, the collective, rather than the individual. How does this play into our confidence? Well, somebody who's confident is not going to care about what other people think about themselves. They are confident and happy within themselves. They will portray and say what they want, what they think, of course within boundaries of being friendly and nice and not rude. So it's a really interesting concept when you talk about the balance of all of these things and how that works with our mental well-being, because somebody who is not confident, somebody who has low self-esteem and who is unsure of their identity will most likely, and research has proven this actually, this will lead to the top two illnesses that we've been discussing: depression and anxiety. So people who don't have a strong sense of self and identity of who they are, what they want to do in their life and their direction in life, they will experience depression and anxiety. And I see that all of the time with my clients. I see that with new people that I meet from around the world. I'll see that with people who are curious and interested and who are, who contact me and want to chat with me, and then, they'll ask me questions about themselves or myself, and I could sense that right away. So it's a fascinating area, and I personally am fully engaged in it when I do have clients who work on it. It's one of my favorite things to work on, because depression, anxiety, and stress, everybody has that. It's almost the same thing, but different scenarios. But when we talk about identity, growth, development, sense of self, like you asked the questions, who am I? What am I? What is my direction in life? All of these things, these are fascinating things, spirituality and whatnot, right? So a lot of things that I see in my office, in my practice, has to do with that. And like I said, those are the fun ones to work with, because you get to see people grow. You get to see people develop and discover who they are and what they want. And like I said, the top problems I encounter with depression and anxiety are those students and those clients who don't know what they want to do with their lives. They're in programs because their parents tell them you must study engineering, you must study medicine, whereas they have the brain and talent of an artist or a writer or somebody with the social sciences. And so they don't know what they want to do with their degree. These are the ones that you will find tend to be a little bit more lost. And this will contribute to illnesses or challenges, mental challenges such as depression or anxiety.
Okay. Now another problem or factor is dual identity. Now me growing up, I really didn't have a problem with the generation that my parents were from and how they were putting the way they were taught on us. But a lot of the people, they do face that problem, trying to cope with what their parents are teaching them, because they come from a different generation and they're from a different generation, or from their parents coming from, for instance, the Middle East, and they're being raised, overseas. So how can we tie this with dual identity, or how can we deal with the dual identity?
Well, this is definitely something you and I have experienced growing up in the West, where our parents come from a traditional Iraqi, Karbala'i, Muslim, Ahlul Bayt type of upbringing. And we know from what Imam Ali alayhi salam says, and I'm paraphrasing here, do not raise your children the same way that you were raised. you know, be aware of your surroundings and the generation that you were in. And there's so much wisdom in psychology, again, from 1400 years ago that we see applicable today, subhanAllah. So here, this is, I think, beautifully describes dual identity with what the Imam says here. So take this concept and let's apply it to us. We grew up in the West. Our parents had these traditional Islamic cultural values. You and I didn't have an issue per se because we believed in it, we followed along, alhamdulillah. It wasn't a problem there. We see the cross-generational cultural clash
yes.
with a lot of the people that in the West, because let's say some of these youth, they do not believe in the same things that their parents believe, or let's say the parents try to raise their children in a way that just doesn't go, it doesn't go smoothly, or it's done in a way that is inappropriate, by forcing hijab, by forcing Islamic cultural values, you know. And the problem here is culture, not religion. Culture. Because
always a problem.
That's the issue, because if you really work with the Islamic values the way it's supposed to be done, you'll have some challenges here and there with people who don't believe in it, like the youth who won't believe in it. But if it's done appropriately the way that we were taught in our faith, you know, the perfection of the faith itself, then you hopefully anticipate there wouldn't be a problem. However, culture gets in the way. Our Iraqi cultural traditions go against our faith. This is where the problem, I believe, happens. And also when you have the clash of children, youth growing up in the West, where they're in school and they're challenged with things that don't go with what our values are. And so they're influenced. Now, 80% of the influences comes from peers around us. That's a huge influence. Because 8 hours of the day, more than 8 hours of the day, we're in school.
Work.
And we're impacted by the people around us as opposed to our parents, which is probably just 20%, less than 20% at the end of the day, because you have, let's say, babysitters or other family or daycare or whatnot. So that will have an impact of influence. So by the time the children get home to the parents, and the parents tell them you have to do this, you have to do that, that's going to have an effect. Let's take the concept of hijab, for example. Your daughter, you know, the child dresses, you know, short clothes or whatever, very young. And all of a sudden, when they hit the age of 9, when you're supposed to wear the hijab, the parents tell the child, okay, you must cover your hair, you must wear long clothes. This child is not used to dressing this way. It has to be a gradual covering before the child reaches that age. And this is what I see appropriately done with some of my friends.
One of the problems that I've witnessed this and saw is, you know, when the child comes to be 9, you know, she's forced. And then you're like, no, Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, you know, and they bring this whole concept of, and then when the girl grows up, she ends up, you know, starting to hating it, and she's wanting to taking it off,
And unfortunately, we've seen that. That's part of the cultural clash as well, the generational. But also, I believe there's a huge responsibility of the parents in terms of education rather. They need to know how to do this appropriately. And that's why I said graduality. So a young daughter, you know, living in the West, or even in our own countries, and I've seen this, not wearing the spaghetti straps and the short, you know, booty shorts. They shouldn't be wearing that, because by the time she gets to the age where she should be covered, she's not used to that. And it's the responsibility of the parents. So I've seen some of my friends, they do that, where the girl will wear, you know, long pants underneath the dress, or a t-shirt underneath her spaghetti strap dress. And as she gets older, because she understands the concept of modesty as she's growing older, by the time and of course introducing the hijab as well here and there on occasions, and of course we talked about modeling and behavior, right? Parents. So this child sees her mother, her older siblings, cousins, and sees hijab in a beautiful way, as opposed to in an oppressive way, which is happening. By the time this young child turns into, you know, a young lady, she's not hating it. And so this is huge when it comes to that cultural generational gap, because later on, this person who doesn't understand what hijab is about as a 9-year-old, and it's forced on her, she's in school and she sees all her friends dressed a certain way, how they talk to boys, how they're interacting within. If she doesn't have a positive influence at home, she's going to be impacted by the peers. Of course, that's going to affect her identity. You know? So there's a huge responsibility upon the parents, upon the youth, the older youth, helping these younger youth understand these things as they grow through the different challenges, because every stage of life you're going to encounter different challenges. How are you going to cope with them? How are you going to cope with these challenges? We all react and respond to stress differently, right? You have to understand your stress response, your response to struggle, so you know how to cope and manage and handle it. And these are the struggles that we're all encountering when it comes to drugs, when it comes to different types of addictions, when it video games, gambling, pornography, all of these things, we're exposed to that in the West, and our parents don't think that we are when it comes to drugs, but we are. And so this becomes a huge cultural and identity, like we said, the dual identity cultural clash. When you are going to high school, and you see in front of you in the auditorium, I experienced this, where you see musical bands or whatever in front of you. And I remember that same night, we came back to the school, and my community had rented out this auditorium for a majlis. Yeah. And so right there, I remember as a 15, 16-year-old, wow, during the day I saw this here. I didn't go, by the way, but I saw it there. Yeah. But in the evening, this is what we see in the same school. Of course you're going to have that clash.
Of course.
We need the tools to know how to handle these difficulties. And to understand, when it comes to self-esteem, confidence, and identity, we need to have a healthy balance of understanding direction in our life and positive influences around us,
Of course. Inshallah, we'll continue the discussion after the break. Respected viewers, please stay tuned after this break. Welcome back, respected viewers. Interaction with the opposite gender is a huge deal in the West, and one of the things that I faced, growing up in the West. Now, can you talk to us a little bit about this issue?
I find this is a funny topic to discuss, because the reality is our parents, and this is where we talk about, the cross-cultural and generational gap, is you're not allowed to breathe the air that the men breathe around you. Do not look at boys, you do not interact. The reality is we live in a world where we're around each other.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about our faith, it doesn't forbid us from interacting with each other. We are supposed to interact with each other with boundaries and rules, of course. Yeah, so that's how we have the physical and the spiritual hijab.
Because from where we come from, the Middle East, we kind of have that boundary, like the other gender understands.
We have doorways going into different doorways. I noticed that in Karbala, when you go to get checked out, you have to go in different doorways and things like that. And it's not meant out of disrespect. It's just these are the cultural values.
The norms.
Yeah.
But in the West, it's kind of hard. I mean, especially when it's coming to like handshakes and having to associate with the other gender. It's kind of hard to tell them, okay, well, I can't shake your hand.
Yeah.
So you're forced to.
Yeah. So this is definitely something that we all had to struggle with growing up. And some people don't have any issues. They will shake hands, all of that. I first used to say, sorry, my religion doesn't allow me to shake hands. And one time my brother said, what are you doing? You're bringing such a negative image to what Islam is about when you say it like that. So over the years, I learned how to soften up, and I have a spiel now, which is, when a male sticks out their hand, I will respectfully bow and go like this and say, sorry, I don't shake hands with men, but this is what I do. It's closer to the heart.
Yeah.
And it's so much nicer. And then after that, it doesn't make it awkward for them or them to get a negative image of Islam, but rather they're like, oh, that's wonderful, that's lovely, and they'll do the little bow themselves.
They'll do the same thing.
After you do that, you break down the awkwardness, then you can explain it's because we don't have physical contact with non-mahrams and people like that. But I do find it is a struggle within our communities where you're not allowed to talk to the opposite gender and whatnot, and it's so wrong, because what happens is we grow up in the communities not knowing who the people are within our community. By the time you get to university, oh, you're the Haidar Mal Beit Abu Haidar, or you're the Muhammad, or you're the this. You don't know each other, and then you end up marrying outside of the community, and then the parents wonder, why are they not marrying within? Well, it's because of this type of deep segregation. I've seen in some communities, for example, the Lebanese and whatnot, they've got it down to an art, meaning they have proper segregation at times, but they also have proper integration at times, whether I've seen this in my own community where, you have the kashaf or the scouts, where there is integration and separation at the same time, work together, have meetings together, and again, there's the respect of the physical and the spiritual hijab. It can be done properly within our own communities, but also outside when we have interactions, people at work, people at school. It's a matter of how we are raised, but how us as individuals, as young developing youth, how we choose to apply this, how we respect and understand our faith, and how we create our identity with the duality of both cultures. Yeah. And this is what I've learned growing up, is take the good from our culture, because we do have good cultural traditions, take from our faith, but also take the good from the culture that you are living in, the Western culture. There's so many Islamic values from this non-Islamic culture that is even more so from our so-called Islamic countries.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of learning how to balance and take the good from everywhere around us to create a solid identity. And it also has to do with, you know, how cool it is to be religious or spiritual, and you know, the image of that. I think there can be a healthy balance of that, and not completely being rigid and completely being fundamental. Our faith is not supposed to be about that. It is about submission to God in terms of peace, right? And also how we portray that out there. And sometimes we have such, you know, when you just stick to just the negative images, that's going to be portrayed out there. People will have the wrong idea. Of course, that's a whole other topic on its own. We talk about Islamophobia, but that can be a huge part of the image that's forced upon us, because there are things that we do not believe in, that is not a part of our faith, but we are forced and challenged to deal with them. And if we say a certain thing, then it looks like we are being phobic of some sort to other, but then it makes us look. People have a wrong idea about Islam, and then this is where Islamophobia. Like I said, that's a whole other topic on its own. But it has had a huge impact on our identity, on our youth, of people growing up in the West, and we need to find a healthy balance, especially when it comes to role models and the lack of role models.
Yes, I don't know if in Canada it was famous, but Jersey Shore was a big thing in the United States, and now it's the Kardashians. Everyone looks up to the Kardashians now.
The celebrities, basically.
Yeah, the celebrities, and we tend to take, you know, some of the things and we start, like you said, we start to imitate them.
This is normal when it comes to youth development, looking into pop culture and society around us to follow what is modeled out for us to follow. And this is normal, and especially when you have young influential minds in high school. And this is why it's so important to understand when it comes to our faith, we have the role models to follow. We have the most modern, yet back 1400 years ago, Sayyidah Khadija al-Kubra. What kind of woman, what kind of human being was she? Was she not modern in her times? She was a businesswoman. She was the one who proposed to the Prophet. There's even some riwayats in the hadith that she was older. Yet nowadays you have the celebrities as people to look up to, whereas you have the role model to follow as a woman, for example. And of course her daughter Sayyidah Fatima and Sayyidah Zainab, who with Sayyidah Khadija, you see how she influenced and she nourished Islam in its beginning, when it was in its poverty stage in the beginning. With her wealth, she nourished it. Sayyidah Fatima stood up with her stance, and Sayyidah Khadija, she left the legacy with her stance and what she had to stand up in the face of oppression. These are the role models that our youth today forget, and I still call these modern, or rather call these role models as modern, because we see these stances today that our youth are taking up, but they're following the wrong type of influences around them, where all you have to do is go back in our history and see the incredible role models that we have when it comes to women, and of course men. You know, we do have that with Al-Abbas and his courage, and Imam Ali alayhi salam and the strength that he exhibited with the oppression that he encountered. So we have these role models, but people today have a disconnect. They cannot relate back to these role models because they're so caught up in the glamour and the glitz of the celebrity today, they forget that what we have is the essence of that.
Of course.
So I find that, you know, when it comes to identity, when it comes to self-esteem and confidence, there's so much more to talk about with that. But I find that our youth need to look back at our own influences, look back and, you know, finding a healthy balance, taking from the West, taking the good from our culture, and taking from our faith to develop. But we need to have positive role models, and not just from our past, but positive role models today from our youth who are in a position where people are looking up to them. And whether it's women or men, whether it's hijab and all of that, you know, we need to have more of that in our society here. And I hope that, you know, what we're doing today can influence the next generation. And, you know, it's okay to be religious. It's okay to be spiritual. It's okay to wear your hijab and be proud of it and go out there. It's okay to stand up and speak. It's okay for women to get involved in our society and be highly educated, whether you choose to work or stay at home or raise your children. It takes courage to go and get help and ask for help. And there's nothing wrong with a woman getting an education and staying at home, because she is raising the next generation of Husseinis and Zainabiyats. There's nothing wrong with that. But then, you know, there is this dynamic that we have when it comes to identity in women and men and marriage, where a lot of women are like, no, I'm just gonna, you know, settle myself in my education, my work, and then they miss out on marriage opportunities. Again, that's a whole other topic on its own. But it does have to do with the pressures of society, the pressures of our family and our community on women and men. And you know, we need to work with that. We need to find a healthy balance for everybody to develop their sense of identity, where they belong, their goals in life, and how they want to contribute meaningfully in our society.
Alhamdulillah. It was really, this topic is really meaningful, and it opens up a lot of doors to other things as well.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, like you said, this interaction or this interaction between me and you opens up other people to come out and speak and have the courage to, go out there and speak about, even their problems. Go out there. Look, maybe you have these problems that we were talking about. Go out there, be courageous, and, talk about your problems.
And be genuine. Be genuine. Nafs al-mutma'inna, that self that is at peace within itself. It's because when you have that internal balance with the outside, that's when you have that genuineness where you can be yourself inside and outside.
Thank you so much for this really interesting discussion, and the whole series was really, really interesting, and hopefully it opens up new doors, and it makes people come out and talk about, their problems, and find a psychiatrist or a therapist that, they go out and they open up about their problems. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Respected viewers, thank you for watching the series with us. We hope you enjoyed it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.